Well, what's also interesting, and another thing that hit me listening to this record is how much a lot of the staring into the sun stuff to me sounds like the early Ignite stuff before when Foster was in the band. I just kind of heard like just similarities just in like the drumming and in the guitars. And what's interesting is that so Foster leaves the band, you get Brian from 1134, and now he's Into Another. Like Ignite are a totally wholesale different sounding band than they were when they first
Sure.
came on the scene in the 90s. And it just makes me wonder, like, had Uniform Choice been able, had the circumstances been able to be, like, you talked about a third Uniform Choice record. It really makes me wonder what that record would have sounded like, because I think it says something. When you brought up Kevin Seconds and New Wind and all this stuff, I think it really says something when you've had success at doing something and you don't continue doing that particular thing. You want to push yourself, and so I think that is. I think that you guys really did something that was necessary.
Well, I appreciate that very, very much. I'd like to think that if we did a Uniform Choice third album, it would have been 80% hard and another 20% where we would have said, I don't give a fuck if you don't like it. We're going to try a couple other cool songs like A Wish to Dream or Once I Cry or something like that. I know we would have done something like that because it was kind of fun to do those things. But I think I mean, in retrospect, we probably would have gone back to more of a harder thing. But again, Vic and Dave were done. They were 5 years older. So let's say Pat was like, hey, listen, I want to keep doing this. I'm not going to go to New York. Let's just have fun doing this stuff. I'm going to do whatever. And we'll pick up a new guitar player and a new bass player. Well, the direction of the band would have still been led by Pat and I because we were pretty strong vocal characters um, for what we wanted to do. Like I said, I'm going to say it again. For better or worse, we were very opinionated and very strong-willed in what we wanted to do. He and I got along really well because we were able to meld our ideas. Were very similar about what we wanted. So if you brought another guitar player in, let's say he was 19 years old and wanted to play hardcore, well, that would have probably we would have played more hardcore stuff because we would have gotten a shot of adrenaline from somebody that really liked what had been done before. So yeah, what if? Yeah, that would have been fun to do, but that band was never going to do a third record at that time. Too many people that were growing up and going different directions. In
Well,
fact, we did the second tour with Pat Mahoney and with John Mastropulo, with completely two different guys, and had a great time doing it. Had a ball doing that tour, which was, um, I mean, we still played the same set. You know, that we did. We played half Scream for Change and half Staring into the Sun, and we didn't do like She's Locked In. We didn't do any of that live. We would do Cut of a Different Cause, I Am You Are, um, Region of Ice, things like that. A Wish to Dream.
how come you wouldn't do She's Locked In live? I mean, because just you just
No, it wasn't it, it didn't feel we did a few times,
hmm,
but it was like let's keep the atmosphere here.
right, right.
When you're in a studio, you can have fun and do some things, right? But sometimes live, you know, we didn't do all of the Scream for Chain album songs. We did some, and then when some of them got old, we, like anything, oh geez, let's do this tonight. Um, we always did, Scream for Change. We always did Once I Cry. We did Use Your Head. Um, all those types of things. But the more catalog you have, the more you can choose from, so everything doesn't get old.
Right.
That's kind of.
Well, you mentioned Pat, and this is actually going into my last question. Do you ever sit back and reflect on what, like, the energy, like, from that friendship that you guys had what it enabled you to do together. Like, have you ever just thought about that and like been like, wow, that's pretty amazing that from the love of this music, we started a record label, we did this band, we were able to do all this stuff with this band, we put out these, because there's a lot of the releases on Wishing Well, the bands like, Instead, Youth of Today, Shades Apart, all this stuff, like they became like seminal bands in their time. Do you guys ever, I mean, like, do you ever just think about like, wow, it really all began with like this guy that I knew or this guy that I know and my friendship with him? Like,
Well, yeah, I didn't. Now that I've gotten back into playing a little bit more and reconnected with old friends um, in the hardcore scene, and obviously we've done a couple of records and played some shows, so it's a lot of fun. It's nice to reflect back on where some people view what we did as positive, and that's all I really even cared about. Again, I'm only going to speak for myself. Is I always wanted to add something because I loved this scene so much. I started in like 1979, and then just loving it so much. I found this was my identity, and a lot of people share the same thing in the hardcore thing. They have this thing. You're kind of drifting a little bit, and I played sports my whole life. I was lucky; I had a wonderful father and mother, and support sisters, brothers, support cast. But this was mine.
right,
Hardcore was mine, and it was such at its infancy, especially straight edge in 1980 in Orange County. There was nothing going on there. So to be influenced by others on the East Coast and with Kevin, we Pat and I took it and made it our own. Again, not copying anything. I mean, that's flattery. I loved the Minor Threat singles when the Discord 1, 2, 3, 4, all of them came out. I loved it. I loved what they were saying and the energy. And we kind of took it and said, okay, what can we do with this? And to this day, again, I'm 55 years old. The basic tenets that I took away from that as being a small little cog, all I wanted to do was add to the scene. What can I do? At first it was I went to all the shows. I went to every show I could possibly get to. I had pen pals, I did flyers, I did this, we got stickers, I bought their products. And then we got into it and we started playing music. And then we did Wishing Well. And then we were a part of it, right? So, but the tenets that I've learned of anti-obsession, anti-drinking, no drugs, all of those things slipped wonderfully into how I raised my three children, which are rock solid citizens, wonderful, very independent, very uh, thought provoking, can share ideas with anybody of color, of doesn't matter your color, your sexual preference, men, women, it doesn't matter. They get along with and have friends with all of the people. I did my job, and my job was really started in its infant embryonic stages with hardcore as a kid at 14 years old, 13, 14, 15 years old. And that's what I take from this music. It's a lot bigger than just a sub character. I have many friends that have no idea that I play music, or play music now, and they bust up laughing because when they find that out, because they're like, "What? Punkers were dirtbags in my school. They had mohawks and green hair, and we're all druggies and loadies." And I'm like, "Okay, well, a lot of those friends were still my friends. I didn't think any less of them,
right.
But that's the main takeaway from this: is nobody is immune when you try something new with staring into the sun for criticism. I had no problem taking it. To this day, it's okay with me. I'd rather be spoken of, good or and bad, rather than never been spoken of at all, because that means I didn't take the chance to stick my neck out to try to add something to the hardcore scene. And I did, and that's what I'm most proud of and I'm happy about. You may like some of the stuff, you may not like some of the stuff, but at least I stepped up. And that's what I'm most proud of because it gave me friendships and a lot more than I ever gave it back. And that's truly from my heart.
And like you said, it all began with looking at this thing that you love and saying, what can I do?
That's how can I be involved in this? I want to be involved in this. I remember sitting in my room. I had flyers all over the walls going, what can I do? How can I be more involved in this? And it doesn't get any better than that. I had a wonderful childhood, young adulthood, basically wrapped around the hardcore scene and the people in it.
A few bands later, Carrie Nation took the stage. Shortly after that, Judge, a band from New York, took the stage. Andrew and I left a few songs into their set. As I was leaving, Nelson introduced me to Greg Brown, Scott Sundahl, Paul T., and other members of a group known as the Orange County Sloth Crew. Eventually, they would nickname me Mushnik, which was a character I had been in a high school play. On the ride home, I had no idea that those people I had just met would become and would be the gateway to the best friends I would ever have.